In the year 2147, after decades of looking up, Earth finally exhaled and pointed its courage toward Mars. This wasn't just another probe or a robotic rover, this was us. The starship, named Aurora's Wake, was a gleaming testament to human ingenuity and borderline reckless optimism. On board were the best and brightest. Brilliant scientists, genius engineers, seasoned doctors, and one very nervous poet who, in a moment of existential curiosity, had accidentally clicked "Accept Mission" on a form he thought was a literary grant application. As the ship broke free from Earth's gentle blue embrace, the mood was electric. Spirits were high, gravity was low, and confidence was dangerously, intoxicatingly optimistic. The crew trained in zero-G, their laughter echoing through the sterile white corridors. They shared freeze-dried meals and stories of home, their faces illuminated by the holographic glow of data screens. They were a family forged in the vacuum of space, united by a singular, audacious dream to set foot on another world. They believed they had prepared for everything. They had run thousands of simulations, stress-tested every system, and memorized every protocol. They were ready. But space, in its infinite and indifferent wisdom, had other plans. It has a way of reminding even the most prepared travelers who is truly in charge. The first test came without warning. A solar storm, a blistering, invisible wave of radiation erupted from the sun. It wasn't in the forecast. The ship's alarms shrieked to life, a symphony of digital panic. Lights flickered, and the Aurora's Wake shuddered like a living thing in pain. The storm rattled their navigation systems, scrambling the complex algorithms that kept them on their precise trajectory. For 3 terrifying days, they were flying blind, adrift in an ocean of stars with no reliable map. The engineers worked tirelessly, their faces pale with exhaustion, rewriting code and rerouting power, their fingers dancing across keyboards to coax the ship's digital brain back to sanity. They succeeded, but a new, unsettling silence settled over the crew. The initial wave of boundless optimism had met its first crack. Then came the subtler, more insidious problems. A critical failure in the hydroponics bay. The intricate system of pumps and lights designed to grow fresh food, their only source of green, earthly comfort, sputtered and died. The hum of life was replaced by a dead quiet. Salads, once taken for granted, became the stuff of legend. The crew would reminisce about the crispness of lettuce, the juicy burst of a cherry tomato. The loss wasn't just nutritional. It was psychological. It was a constant nagging reminder of their profound isolation, of the fragile thread connecting them to the living world they had left behind. Their diet devolved into nutrient paste, a bland, utilitarian substance that sustained the body but starved the soul. In the confined metal hallways, where the recycled air always smelled faintly of ozone and machinery, friendships were tested. The initial camaraderie began to fray under the relentless pressure. With no escape, no change of scenery, minor annoyances festered into major resentments. The silence between conversations grew heavier, louder than the constant thrum of the life support systems. Every crew member was a universe of anxiety, orbiting others in a delicate, easily disturbed dance. They had trained for technical failures, for medical emergencies. No one had fully prepared them for the slow, creeping erosion of the human spirit when trapped in a metal can millions of miles from everything they'd ever known. Yet through it all they endured. They repaired, they rationed, they reconciled. And then one day it appeared. A tiny reddish speck in the viewport, growing larger with each passing hour. Mars. It wasn't the romanticized red planet of fiction. It was real, raw, and overwhelmingly ancient. As the Aurora's Wake settled into orbit, the crew, forgetting their squabbles and their fears, pressed their hands and faces to the glass. A shared unspoken awe filled the bridge. The rust-red plains, the sweeping canyons, the ghostly white of the polar ice caps, it was a masterpiece of cosmic desolation. In that moment, they realized this journey wasn't just about traveling through space. They were traveling away from who they used to be, shedding their old selves with every million miles they crossed. The people who left Earth were not the same people who had just arrived at Mars. Touching down was a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. The poet, much to his own surprise, was the one who captured it best, whispering a line that was later etched onto the landing site plaque. The dust of another world, a footprint of our shared soul. But the triumph was fleeting. Mars was beautiful, but it was also hostile, and deeply, profoundly unimpressed by the arrival of these strange, soft-bodied creatures from the third planet. The planet itself seemed to resist them. Vicious dust storms, appearing with little warning, would sweep across the plains, turning the sky a dark, angry orange and swallowing the solar panels whole. The crew would be plunged into darkness, relying on backup power, the howling wind a constant reminder of their vulnerability. The isolation, which had been a challenge on the ship, became a crushing weight on the planet's surface. The vast, empty horizon seemed to stretch into infinity, a landscape that gnawed at the edges of their sanity. They were the loneliest humans in existence. One wrong calculation during a geological survey mission nearly stranded an exploratory team forever. A misread of the terrain's stability caused the rover to slip into a ravine, severing its communications line. For 12 agonizing hours, the base held its breath, a frantic rescue operation underway in near-zero visibility. It was a stark lesson. Mars didn't want conquerors. It demanded humility. It didn't reward heroics. It rewarded caution, precision, and cooperation. Survival became a collective effort. The geologist who knew the rock formations, the engineer who could coax a broken radio back to life, the doctor who could treat frostbite and calm a panic attack, everyone was essential. Every breath of oxygen felt borrowed, a temporary loan from the intricate machinery that kept them alive. They weren't masters of this new world. They were its most fragile guests. The journey home was, in many ways, harder than the journey out. The Aurora's wake, once a pristine marvel, was now scarred and patched. Systems that had been pushed to their limits sputtered and groaned. Fuel was rationed with painstaking precision, every burn calculated to the last drop. There was no fanfare this time, no jubilant confidence. The crew was quieter, more introspective. They carried an invisible weight, the grief for what they'd lost, the growth from what they'd endured, and a new, humbling understanding of their own fragility. They had seen the universe up close and had been irrevocably changed by the experience. Then, after months of tense, silent travel through the black, they saw it. Rising into view, a swirl of brilliant white clouds over an impossible, vibrant blue. Earth, alive, overflowing with it. No one cheered at first. There were no shouts of victory. On the bridge of the Aurora's wake, surrounded by the silence of space, the crew wept. Tears streamed down their faces as they stared at the home they had fought so hard to return to. It was a sight more beautiful and more precious than any of them had remembered. The mission logs would be filled with data, with scientific discoveries that would rewrite textbooks. But the true discovery wasn't in the soil samples or atmospheric readings. Mars had not given them glory or riches or the certainty they had set out to find. It gave them something far more valuable: perspective. They had traveled across the solar system only to discover the planet they had left behind. They returned not as pioneers or conquerors, but as witnesses. They had stood on the edge of humanity's reach and looked back, and in doing so, they had learned the most important lesson of all. The future of humanity wasn't about escaping Earth, about finding a new home to colonize. It was about learning how to care for worlds, starting with the one that gave us life. And maybe, just maybe, in the process, learning how to better care for themselves. They had gone to Mars to find a new world, but instead, they had found their own humanity. Thank you so much for watching. If this story sparks something in you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the what-ifs of our future. Stay curious.